Every morning started the same way, with pain in my knees and back. Not a sharp, cutting pain as it is in young people, but a dull, constant one, like an old friend who has moved into your house uninvited, but you can't kick him out. With a sigh, I rose from the bed I had slept in alone for nearly 4 years. Elizabeth was gone in 2022, pancreatic cancer, quick and ruthless. My name is Eugene Thornton, 68 years old, former civil engineer, widower, father of 1 son. A man who spent his life building solid foundations for other people's homes, but never got to build a strong family. My house in Rockford, a 2-story house with a porch and a small garden, looked too big for a lonely old man. But I wasn't going to sell it. Every corner, every creaking floorboard held memories of the past, when Elizabeth had been alive and Aidan had not yet become his wife's shadow. I wandered into the kitchen and turned on the coffee maker, the only modern appliance I'd allowed myself to buy in recent years. Appliances, in my opinion, should last for decades, like my old refrigerator, humming in the corner of the kitchen since 1997. Economy and calculation, I mumbled, pulling a jar of precisely measured coffee out of the cabinet. It was a principle I'd learned as a child when my father, a simple factory worker, would sit down at the kitchen table every night and meticulously record all expenses in a worn notebook. "Eugene," he used to say, "money doesn't come by itself. Behind every dollar are hours of your labor. Respect your time." And I did. 43 years as a civil engineer, first with a large company, then I opened my own small office. No frills, no frivolous spending, a fixed amount every month into a savings account. Elizabeth sometimes complained that we could afford more, travel, a new car, renovations, but I was adamant. "You need a safety cushion for your old age," I explained to her. "No one knows what will happen tomorrow." Now, this cushion amounted to a rather impressive sum. Enough to get through the rest of my days without worrying about tomorrow. Enough to get Brooke's attention. I grimaced as my thoughts turned to my son's wife, Brooke Palmer, now Thornton. 34 years old, attractive, with a deceptively soft voice and a hard-as-flint personality. When Aidan had brought her to meet Elizabeth and me 7 years ago, I'd sensed something wrong right away. There was something predatory in the way she'd looked around our house, the way she'd asked about my work. But Aidan was blinded by love, and then it was too late. Aidan, my only son, 42 years old, a data scientist for an insurance company. He was always soft, malleable. High school bully, university quiet, buried in his books. All in his mother, the neighbors said, and it was true. From Elizabeth he inherited not only soft facial features, but also the character, kind, compliant, non-conflict. As I grew older, I began to realize that my strictness in raising my son may have made him even more timid, insecure. I always demanded more from him than he could give. I wanted to nurture in him the resilience that had helped me out of poverty. But I think it backfired. When Brooke showed up, she quickly filled the willpower vacuum in my son's life, and he was relieved to hand over the reins to her. I sipped my coffee looking out the window at my neat but somewhat neglected garden. After Elizabeth's death, I'd stopped giving it the attention it deserved, like so much else in my life. Once a week, usually on Sundays, Aidan and Brooke would come over for lunch. It was a tradition started while Elizabeth was still alive and strangely kept alive after she was gone. Now, though, those visits had turned into strained, awkward meetings, with Brooke glancing at her watch with ill-concealed impatience, and Aidan trying to fill the silence with awkward stories about work. The last such lunch had been 3 weeks ago, and it resurfaced particularly clearly in my mind. "Dad, you look tired," Aidan said then, helping me clear the dishes from the table. "Everyone looks tired at my age," I cut him off. "You need help around the house," he continued. "Maybe you should hire someone." "Some stranger going through my stuff?" I snorted. "No thanks." Eugene, Brooke interjected with that special tone she used when she wanted to sound thoughtful. We're really worried. After your pneumonia last month, it was just hypothermia, I interrupted. Dr. Murphy said you're lucky you're okay. Brooke stepped closer and put her hand on my shoulder. You know, Aiden and I were thinking, maybe you should give us power of attorney, just in case. If something were to happen, we could help with payments, bills. I dropped her hand, a little more harshly than I intended. I'm fine, and so are my bills, Dad. Aiden came up from the other side. It's just a precaution. Remember how hard it was with Mom's paperwork when his voice shook, when she was gone. We just want to avoid that kind of trouble. I looked at my son. There was genuine concern in his eyes, or so I wanted to think. I'll think about it, I answered then. And I did. And then, a week later, whether it was a moment of weakness or a desire to make things right with my only son, I signed the damn power of attorney at the notary's office. A joint power of attorney for both Aiden and Brooke. Elizabeth always said I was too suspicious, that I should trust people more. Maybe she was right, and this was my chance to change. Now, as I finished my cooled coffee, I thought about how those Sunday lunches had gradually changed. First, Brooke was interested in my health, then my retirement savings, then my investments. And the last time, after signing the power of attorney, she asked, as if by the way, if I'd thought about making myself a little happy. You can't take money to the grave, Eugene, she said. Why not allow yourself a little luxury? Maybe a cruise. You've never been on a cruise? Spend thousands of dollars to sail on a huge boat with a bunch of strangers. I shook my head. No thanks. Life goes by, Dad. Aiden sighed. Mom always wanted to travel more. That was a low blow. Using Elizabeth's memory to manipulate me. I stood up abruptly from the table. I need to take my medication, I said, and walked out of the room, leaving them looking at each other. They didn't come back after that Sunday. Aiden called a couple times, saying they had a lot of work to do, that Brooke was a little sick. I didn't insist on visits. My inner voice, the same voice that had spent a lifetime warning me of danger and helping me avoid financial traps, whispered that something was wrong. The phone on the kitchen wall rang, snapping me out of my memories. It was Helen Rivers, my neighbor, a 72-year-old widow who occasionally brought me home-baked goods and, I suspected, hoped for something more than a neighborly relationship. Eugene, dear, would you like to come in for tea? I made blueberry pie. Thank you, Helen, but I have a lot to do today. I lied. In fact, I didn't have anything to do except the usual pensioner's routine. Read the paper, check the mail, walk to the store, watch the evening news. Well, suit yourself, she sounded disappointed. By the way, I haven't seen your son and his wife for a long time. Are they okay? Yeah, just a lot of work, I repeated Aiden's excuse. I understand. Tell them I said hi. And come by for pie when you have time. I hung up the phone and sighed. Maybe I should have accepted the invitation. Helen wasn't a bad woman practical, not overly sentimental. Elizabeth had said I'd grow stale alone. Perhaps she was already right. I began my usual morning ritual of turning on my computer to check the news and bank accounts. Elizabeth laughed at my habit of checking the state of our finances daily, but to me, it was akin to meditation, to see the interest dripping into the account, the amount of money growing to secure the future, our future, mine now and someday Aiden's. Despite all the disagreements, I had always believed that the money I earned would one day go to my son. It was the natural order of things. Lately, though, the thought that a significant portion of my savings would end up in Brooke's hands sent an unpleasant chill along my spine. Maybe I should have reconsidered the will, set aside some money for an education fund for the grandchildren I didn't have yet, but secretly hoped for, or maybe stipulate special inheritance provisions. I went out onto the veranda, sat in the old rocking chair that had once belonged to my father. The morning air was cool but clean, with the light fragrance of roses blooming in Helen's garden. The veranda overlooked a quiet street in our neighborhood, neat houses, manicured lawns. Rockford had always been a conservative town where tradition and stability were valued. Most of my neighbors had lived here for decades, as had I myself. Elizabeth often said that we were stuck in time, that the world around us needed to change, but I loved that permanence. Now, looking out at the familiar landscape, I thought of Brooke, about how she'd looked at that same view on her first visit to our house. "A little provincial, isn't it?" she'd said then, with a faint note of disdain. And then, with false enthusiasm, "But very nice. So authentic." I sensed an alien element in her even then, not just because she was from the big city, raised in a family with money, used to a different lifestyle. There was something else, some kind of calculation, as if she was constantly evaluating everything around her, not in terms of beauty or convenience, but in terms of value. Aidan had been dazzled by her from the first time he'd met her. He'd always gravitated toward strong personalities, perhaps to compensate for his own softness. In high school, he'd been friends with bullies who ended up making him a scapegoat. In college, dated a girl who cheated on him with his roommate. And now Brooke. I remembered their wedding day well. Elizabeth was still alive, but already weakened by the first courses of chemotherapy. She had insisted on attending even though I had offered to postpone the ceremony. "Eugene," she told me, "I want to see our boy get married. Who knows how long I have left?" The wedding was lavish. Brooke insisted. Big hall, expensive restaurant, celebrities as musicians. I paid half of it, as a father of the groom should, though I inwardly protested against such a waste. Brooke's parents, groomly men with strained smiles, paid for the other half, though they could have afforded the whole wedding. Brooke glowed in a dress that I later learned had cost more than Aidan's monthly salary. My son looked happy, but somehow lost amidst all this luxury and these people, Brooke's friends and co-workers who talked about things that didn't interest him. During the reception, I happened to overhear Brooke and her friend talking. They were standing at the bar, not noticing me behind a large pillar. "He's cute," the friend was saying, "but isn't he a little boring for you?" "He has his strengths," Brooke said with a knowing smile. "And besides, have you seen his father? He's a tough old man, only child in the family. You know what I mean?" They laughed, and I quietly stepped back, not wanting to hear the rest of it. That night was the first time I seriously questioned my son's choice. But what could I say? That his wife had married him with an eye to my inheritance. Without proof, based on an overheard conversation, Aidan would have taken offense, and Brooke would have had another excuse to turn him against me. And now, 7 years later, sitting on the veranda of my house, I realized that my suspicions might not have been unfounded. The last few weeks, the sudden disappearance after receiving power of attorney, the strange questions about cruises. My gaze stopped on the mailbox at the entrance to the garden. The red flag was up, meaning the letter carrier had already delivered today's mail. I rose slowly from my chair, feeling my knees crunch, and walked to the wicket. Among the flyers and bills was an envelope from my bank. Not an electronic notice, but a real paper letter. I rarely received these, usually only annual reports or notices of changes in bank policy. I opened the envelope right at the gate and started reading. The blood drained from my face as I realized the contents of the letter. The bank was notifying me of a series of large transactions on my account over the past 2 weeks. Transactions I knew nothing about. The letter from the bank turned out to be just the first chime. I sat at the kitchen table, bank statements spread out in front of me, and tried to make sense of what was happening. The first transaction, $2,000, had been made 3 days after I had signed the unfortunate power of attorney. The recipient was a designer clothing store downtown. then another $4,000 to a jewelry boutique, followed by a large transfer to an event management company. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, checking the dates. All the transactions had been made within the last week, and I had no idea about these purchases. With trembling fingers, I dialed Aiden's number. Long beeps and no answer. I sent a message and it went unread. I tried Brooke, same result. The chill of worry I'd been feeling for the past few days had turned into an icy block of anxiety. I glanced at the clock, almost noon. Aiden had to be at work. I found a business card for the insurance company where he worked and dialed the number listed. "Secure Future Insurance Company. How can I help you?" I heard a woman's voice. "Hi, can I speak to Aiden Thornton? This is his father." Pause. "Mr. Thornton is taking a 2-week vacation. He'll be back in the middle of the month. Can I help you get in touch with someone else?" "No, thank you." I hung up, feeling anger building up inside. Vacation. Aiden never took 2-week vacations, usually 3 or 4 days a week tops, and he always warned me, even if he wasn't going to visit. I went back to the statements. The amounts kept going up. $7,000 to the beauty parlor, another $15,000 for some obscure purchases, and the last largest, $38,000 to the Ocean Dreams travel company. I calculated the total amount in my mind. It turned out that about $66,000 had disappeared from my account in a week, more than half of all my savings. My heart was pounding somewhere in my throat. I tried to calm down, convincing myself that there had to be some reasonable explanation. Maybe Aiden had decided to surprise me, some kind of gift, or no, it didn't make sense. No one in their right mind would spend that much money without consulting its owner. I went back to the last transfer. Ocean Dreams. Something familiar. Brooke had mentioned cruises at our last lunch. Why not afford a little luxury? I remembered her words. I opened my laptop and typed the company's name into the search engine. Ocean Dreams is your ticket to the world of luxury travel. Going to the website, I saw pictures of huge white liners, luxurious cabins with balconies, swimming pools, and restaurants on board. Prices started from $5,000 per person and reached absurd sums for suites with personal service. $38,000. That money could buy a luxurious 2-week cruise for 2 people with full board, excursions, and every possible amenity. I felt the blood rush to my face. Had Brooke really dared to steal my money to pay for herself and Aiden a luxury vacation? I needed proof. I logged onto my Facebook page, which I hardly ever used. Elizabeth had insisted I start it to keep in touch with the world. Since her death, I'd only logged in there occasionally, looking at pictures of the grandchildren of my few friends. I found Brooke's page. Her last post was published just 3 hours ago. The picture is of her in big sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat against the ocean and the white side of a cruise ship. The caption: "Day 1 of our fabulous trip. Been looking forward to this for so long. #totally, #cruise, #dreams come true." Aiden could be seen in the background with a glass of some kind of cocktail. He looked a little tense but was smiling at the camera. I scrolled down the page. More photos posted over the past few days. Brooke trying on new dresses at the boutique, Brooke with a new necklace, Brooke at the beauty salon. It was all coming together now. They had spent my money preparing for this cruise and then the cruise itself. Without my knowledge, without a word. Using a power of attorney that I had naively signed. I felt rage boiling up inside. Not so much for the money, although the loss of $66,000 was quite tangible, but for the betrayal, my own son, my daughter-in-law, the people I was going to make my heirs. I had to act. I grabbed the phone and called my bank. "Mr. Thornton, all transactions were made in accordance with the power of attorney you executed." The bank officer explained to me after a long check. "Brooke Thornton has every right to dispose of your funds on the basis of this document. But this is abuse," I was practically screaming into the phone. "She took more than half of my savings without my knowledge." "I'm sorry, Mr. Thornton, But legally, it's the right thing to do. A power of attorney doesn't limit the amount of money a trustee can use. If you feel there has been an abuse of trust, you should contact a lawyer or the police. For our part, we can only revoke the power of attorney to prevent further transactions. Do it immediately, I demanded. You will have to come to the bank in person with identification. It is not possible to revoke the power of attorney remotely. I held back a curse that was about to burst from my lips, thanked the employee, and hung up. Then I quickly changed my clothes and called a cab to the nearest bank branch. 2 hours later, with my power of attorney revoked and my account temporarily blocked, I returned home. The rage had subsided a bit, giving way to cold determination. I needed more information. I picked up the phone again and dialed Helen's number. Eugene? She was surprised. Change your mind about the pie? Helen, do you happen to know what's going on at Aiden and Brooke's house? Maybe you've seen some activity in the last few days? Let me think. She was quiet for a while. Yeah, there was something strange. 2 days ago, they had a cab come by and they loaded a lot of suitcases. And then I saw Brooke taking boxes out and loading them into the dumpster. Pretty expensive boxes, you know, from brand-name stuff. I guess they were celebrating something or going somewhere. Thank you, Helen. I paused. About the pie, maybe tomorrow? Of course, darling. It's not going anywhere. I could hear the smile in her voice. I sat in silence for a while longer, thinking about the situation. Then I decided to call Aiden's cousin Penelope. They had always been close, and if anyone knew about his plans, it was her. Uncle Eugene! Penelope sounded surprised. How are you doing? Not bad, I lied. Listen, do you happen to know where Aiden is now? I can't get him on the phone. Didn't he tell you? There was confusion in her voice. He and Brooke went on a cruise, Caribbean, 2 weeks. Brooke had been talking about it for months, a second honeymoon kind of thing. No, I said slowly. He didn't tell me. That's weird. Penelope clearly felt awkward. They seemed to have recently left, maybe just did not have time to warn you. You know, pre-departure fuss and all that. Maybe, I agreed, not wanting to involve my niece in this situation. Thank you, Penelope. After talking to her, I felt the need to learn more, and the only place I could get more information was Aiden and Brooke's house. I hailed a cab again. Their house was in a suburb of Rockford, one of those newer neighborhoods with identical houses and neat lawns that I'd always thought were impersonal. The trip took about 20 minutes. Looking for the Thorntons? A voice called out as I approached their house. I turned around. A man in his 50s stood on the neighboring lawn watering the lawn. Yes, I'm Aiden's father, I answered, walking toward the fence. Oh, I see, the neighbor nodded. They left a couple days ago. Big cruise. Brooke was really proud of it, telling everyone at the barbecue last weekend. Barbecue? I questioned. Yeah, they had a going-away party before they left. Half the neighborhood was invited, he grinned. I'm Ray Sinclair, by the way. We've lived in the neighborhood for 3 years. Eugene Thornton. I put my arm through the fence. So they've been planning this trip for a long time. As far as I know, the decision was pretty spontaneous. Brooke said something about, he hesitated, an unexpected financial opportunity. I thought you knew about it. Not really, I answered dryly. What else did she say? Ray scratched the back of his head, clearly uncomfortable. Well, to be honest, she was bragging about how they could afford more now than they could before, hinted at some change in their financial situation. I didn't think much of it, maybe a promotion or an inheritance. It's ironic. On the drive home, I tried to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Brooke and Aiden had planned the trip. They threw a farewell party. They bought new clothes, jewelry, paid for some services, all on my dime, and they never said a word about it to me. At home, I opened my laptop and went to Brooke's Facebook page again. A new post published an hour ago. Selfies against the sunset. Brooke in an evening gown that I was sure had been bought with my money. The caption, Captain's first dinner, feeling like a queen, hashtag luxury vacation, hashtag dream come true. Aiden wasn't in the photo this time. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. How had we gotten to this point? Where had I made a mistake in raising my son? When had Brooke decided she could steal from her father-in-law with impunity? Unanswered questions swirled around in my head as I sat in the darkening room. Finally, I turned on the desk lamp and pulled a stack of documents from my desk drawer. My will, insurance policies, certificates of ownership. I always kept all the important papers in perfect order. Slowly going through the papers, I came across a business card I'd put there years ago. Winifred Holloway, family and probate attorney. Elizabeth's classmate, a sharp-tongued but incredibly competent woman. I twirled the business card in my hands. I wasn't a person prone to impulsive decisions or revenge. All my life I'd tried to act rationally, weighing the pros and cons. But now something in me has changed. The betrayal of my son and daughter-in-law had blown a hole in my usual calm. I needed advice, not just legal advice, but human advice. And Winifred, with her candor and experience, seemed the right person. I looked at my watch, almost 8 o'clock in the evening. Too late for business calls. I set the business card aside, deciding to call in the morning. The night passed restlessly. I woke up several times, agonizing over thoughts that I should have been more careful, more cautious. Power of attorney. Who in their right mind would sign a general power of attorney with no limits on amounts? Only a naive old man who decided his family was trustworthy. I woke up this morning with a clear plan of action. The first thing I did was to call Winifred Holloway and make an appointment for the same day. Eugene Thornton? Her voice sounded exactly as I remembered it, low, husky. Elizabeth's husband. Jesus, it's been years. What happened? Family problems, I answered briefly. I need legal advice. Come back at 1 o'clock, she said without further ado. Do you know where my office is? I wrote down the address and thanked her. Then I went to the bank to get full statements for all the transactions and have them officially certified. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next, but I felt I would need proof. The bank teller, a young guy with attentive eyes, listened sympathetically to my brief version of events. Unfortunately, these cases are not uncommon, Mr. Thornton, he said as he printed out the statements. Especially when it comes to elderly clients and their relatives. You were right to revoke the power of attorney. Is there any way to get the money back? I asked. He shook his head. The bank can't cancel transactions made under a power of attorney that was valid at the time. That's a matter of civil action. You'll need a good lawyer. I nodded, accepting a stack of printouts and an envelope of certified copies. Thanks for your help. Leaving the bank, I felt the need to take a walk before meeting Winifred. The day was clear, with a slight breeze, just the kind of weather Elizabeth liked. On days like this, it seems like anything is possible, she used to say. I walked slowly through the streets of Rockford, pondering how things had turned out. Money. All my life I had saved it, invested it to ensure a trouble-free old age and leave something for my son. And now it's the same money that caused my betrayal. Maybe Elizabeth was right. Maybe we really should have traveled more, spent more on ourselves, enjoyed life. It's too late to think about that now. Winifred's office was located in an old brick building in the center of town. The stylish sign on the door read, Holloway & Associates, Legal Services. I walked in at 1 o'clock sharp. Winifred met me in a spacious office overlooking the city park. She hadn't changed much in the years I hadn't seen her. The same slender figure, the same penetrating eyes, though her hair was now completely gray. Eugene, she shook my hand firmly. Sit down, tell me what happened. And I did. Everything from start to finish. The power of attorney, the transactions, the cruise, the betrayal of my son and daughter-in-law. Winifred listened without interrupting, making occasional notes in her notebook. So they took $66,000 without your knowledge or consent, using a power of attorney, and are now on a cruise bought with that money. she summarized when I was done. That's right, I nodded. Winifred leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen on the table. Legally, the situation is ambiguous, she said slowly. A power of attorney does give you the right to dispose of the funds. But there is the concept of breach of trust and fraud. The fact that they concealed their actions from you, spent a significant amount of money on personal needs, and apparently had no intention of informing you, that could be considered abuse. Can I sue them? You can. And we have a good chance of winning, but Eugene, she leaned forward, it's going to be a long and unpleasant process. Family courts are the dirtiest. Are you ready for that? I wondered. Am I ready for a public scandal? For my son and daughter-in-law to have to defend themselves, possibly making me look bad? Are there other options? I asked. There are, Winifred nodded. First, you can demand a refund in a pretrial order. If they agree, the problem will be solved without a trial. Secondly, she paused, you can change your will. Will? I raised an eyebrow. Eugene, let's be honest. From what you've told me, Brooke is primarily interested in your money. Perhaps the most effective punishment for her would be disinheritance. I nodded slowly. The thought had crossed my mind before. What about Aiden? He is my son, after all. Winifred sighed. That's up to you. You can exclude Brooke only, leaving Aiden's share. Or reduce his share in favor of, say, an educational fund for future grandchildren. Or set up a trust with certain conditions. The options are many. I rubbed my temples. My head was starting to hurt from all this information. I need to think about it. Of course, Winifred nodded, but there's something else you can do right away. What's that? Report the possible fraud to the police. That will set an official precedent, even if you decide not to take the case to court. And also, she looked me straight in the eye, I'd start the procedure for a new will right now if I were you, just to be on the safe side. I could feel the determination building up inside. Winifred was right. I had to act before my emotions got the better of me. Okay, I said. Let's start with the application and the new will. Winifred nodded and pulled a form from her desk drawer. Then let's get started. And Eugene, she put her hand on mine, Elizabeth would be proud of you for keeping your cool. She always said that beneath your sternness lurked a steel rod. I smiled weakly, remembering my wife. Yes, Elizabeth had always seen more in me than I saw in myself. For the next 2 hours, Winifred and I spent the next 2 hours compiling the police report and sketching out a draft of a new will. I decided to exclude Brooke completely and to limit Aiden's share considerably, setting a number of conditions for him to receive his inheritance. I planned to leave some of the money to an educational fund for potential grandchildren and some to a trust with strict conditions. When we were done, I felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if the weight that had been weighing on me for the past few days had receded a bit. Tomorrow I'll finalize the will and you can sign it, Winifred said as she walked me to the door. And you can go to the police right now, if you want. Yes, I nodded, the sooner the better. The police station was a few blocks from Winifred's office. The application process was tedious. A long wait, lots of questions, forms to fill out. But eventually the application was accepted, and I was given a copy with a case number. We will contact you after a preliminary review, Mr. Thornton, said the officer who took the application. It usually takes 3 to 5 business days. I thanked him and went outside. The sun was already setting, painting the streets of Rockford a warm orange color. I decided to walk home to clear my head. It had been a busy day. I had taken the first steps toward justice, but it was hard on my soul. This was not how I envisioned my relationship with my son in my old age. Elizabeth had always dreamed of grandchildren, a big family gathering for Sunday dinner. Now all I was left with were cold legal documents and a bitter sense of betrayal. That evening, I was sitting on the veranda watching the last rays of the sun disappear over the horizon when my phone rang. Aiden's name popped up on the screen. I froze, hesitant to answer it. How had he found out? Had someone from the police already contacted him? Or had the bank informed him that the power of attorney had been revoked? After the fifth ring, I pressed the answer button. Yes, I said dryly. Dad. Aiden's voice sounded agitated, almost frightened. Dad, what's going on? I just got a call from the bank saying that you revoked your power of attorney and filed some kind of complaint. What do you think is going on? I replied coldly. You and your wife stole $66,000 from me. You used the power of attorney I gave you, relying on your integrity.
Dad, that's not true.
Aiden sounded desperate.
We didn't steal. This is all just a misunderstanding.
A misunderstanding? I felt the anger boiling up inside me again. You call it a misunderstanding that you withdrew over half my savings without my knowledge or consent, spent it on a cruise and clothes for Brooke. It was Brooke's idea. Aiden's voice shook. She said you wouldn't mind, that you were the one who'd talked about us traveling more, enjoying life. I never said that. I cut him off. And even if I did, that doesn't give you the right to take my money without asking. Dad, please. Aiden was almost crying. We'll get it all back, I promise. As soon as we get back from the cruise. Brooke will find a way. Brooke, I grinned bitterly. The same Brooke who was posting pictures on the internet of herself in expensive outfits bought with my money. The same Brooke who organized a party for the neighbors before she left, bragging about an unexpected financial opportunity. Pause. How do you know about the party? Aiden asked quietly. I was talking to your neighbor, Ray Sinclair. Nice man. Very talkative. Dad, I swear I didn't know she was planning to spend that much. I thought it was gonna be, a modest vacation. She said you wouldn't mind, that you'd even be happy for us. Stop lying, Aiden, I said tiredly. You knew perfectly well that I would never approve of that kind of spending. You knew that, and you let her do it anyway. And now you're calling me, not because you're ashamed, but because the bank told you that the power of attorney had been revoked and you were afraid of the consequences.
No, Dad, that's not true. I'm really sorry. We'll get it all back. I promise. Just, please, don't do anything, radical.
Radical?
I grinned.
You mean don't go to the police? Or not changing the will?
The silence on the other end was more eloquent than any answer.
It's too late, son, I said after a pause. I've already filed a fraud report with the police, and I'm signing a new will tomorrow. Dad, no! Aiden sounded genuinely horrified. Please, let's talk about this. I'm sure we can find a solution. Brooke wants to talk to you too. I don't want to talk to your wife, I cut him off. And I have nothing more to say to you. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. Dad, please! Aiden yelled. Can you at least tell me what you're going to do? How can we fix this situation? I took a deep breath. Despite the anger, he was still my son. The only child Elizabeth and I loved so much. I'll tell you what, Aiden. I'm signing a new will tomorrow. Brooke is completely excluded, not a dime. Your share is severely limited and contingent. As for the stolen money, you have two choices. Either you return the entire amount within a month of your return and I withdraw the police report, or the case goes to court and the consequences will be much more serious than just losing your inheritance. We'll pay it back, Aiden said hastily. Of course we will. Every dime of it. Good, I nodded, though he couldn't see me. One more thing, son. Trust is like a porcelain vase. Once broken, it's almost impossible to glue back together. Remember that. I hung up without waiting for an answer. My hands were trembling slightly and my heart was pounding somewhere in my throat. I hadn't expected this conversation to get me so excited. The phone rang again almost immediately. This time it was an unfamiliar number. Probably a cruise ship. Brooke had decided to intervene. I dropped the call and turned the phone off. I needed to keep my mind clear. Tomorrow was the big day, signing a new will. I didn't want my emotions to influence my decision. The night passed restlessly. I dreamt of Elizabeth saying something important, but I couldn't make out the words. I dreamed of young Aiden, laughing and carefree, like he had been before he met Brooke. I dreamed about money, green bills flying in the wind that I tried in vain to collect. In the morning, I woke up with a headache, but with a strong determination to see it through. I washed, shaved, and put on my best suit, the same one I'd buried Elizabeth in. It seemed symbolic, as if I were burying my former relationship with my son. Winifred was waiting for me in her office with the documents ready. The will was drawn up exactly as we'd discussed. Brooke was completely excluded. Aiden's share was limited and subject to a number of requirements, including the return of stolen funds. A portion of my estate was going into a trust for potential grandchildren, with strict conditions on its use. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Winifred asked, as I picked up the pen to sign. "Absolutely," I replied firmly. I signed all the required copies. Winifred and her assistant signed as witnesses. The notary, who had been invited specially for the occasion, certified the documents with his seal. "That's it," Winifred said, tucking the papers into a folder. "It's official now. We'll send a copy to the Register of Wills today." "Thank you." I shook her hand. "For everything." "You're welcome," she smiled. "It's my job." "And Eugene," she paused. "I know this is hard for you, but remember, you're doing the right thing. You can't let people take advantage of your kindness with impunity." I nodded, not trusting my voice. There was a lump in my throat. Walking out of Winifred's office, I turned on my phone. 23 missed calls from Aiden and 8 more from the same unknown number, and 1 voicemail. I listened to it right outside. Brooke's voice sounded unusually soft, almost pleading. "Eugene, this is Brooke. Please call us back. We can explain everything. This is really a misunderstanding. We were going to surprise you, organize—" I deleted the message without listening to it. Surprise? Do they really think I'm that naive? The phone rang again. Aiden. This time I decided to answer it. Yes?
Dad! My son's voice sounded even more frightened than yesterday.
Please tell me you didn't do this. You didn't change the will. I did, I answered briefly. I signed it 5 minutes ago. God, Dad! Aiden seemed to choke. You don't understand. This is going to ruin our lives. Brooke says it was a misunderstanding, that she was planning a surprise for all of us. What kind of surprise, Aiden? I couldn't hide my annoyance. She spent $66,000 on a cruise, clothes, and jewelry for herself. Where's the surprise for me? She says that, he hesitated. She was planning on booking you on the cruise, for the second week of the cruise. A surprise for your birthday, and all this shopping is preparation for the celebration. I laughed bitterly. My birthday is in October, Aiden. It's 3 months away. And I never said I wanted to go on a cruise. On the contrary, I've repeatedly spoken out against such travel.
Yeah, I don't know, Dad, his voice shook. Brooke said. Stop repeating what Brooke said.
I raised my voice, ignoring the passers-by looking at me curiously.
Use your head for once in your life. Your wife stole from your father, and you're still trying to justify it.
Silence on the other end of the line. What exactly did you change in the will? Aiden finally asked in a quiet voice. Brooke is completely excluded. Your share is severely limited and subject to a number of requirements, including full repayment of the stolen funds. Most of the estate goes into a trust for your future children, if you ever have any, with strict terms of use. Dad, it's... Aiden couldn't seem to find the words. It's fair, I said firmly, and it's final. If you return the money within a month of your return, I'll withdraw the police report. If you don't, it goes to court. It's your choice. We will, Aiden said quickly. I promise. Just please, no police. Brooke will get in trouble at work if they find out about this. Stopshius. You should have thought of that before, I said coldly. Before you stole money from your own father-in-law. Dad, please. Aiden sounded desperate. We can fix this. Just give us a chance. I took a deep breath. Despite my anger, it hurt to hear my son suffer, but I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me. I'll tell you what, Aiden, give me the money back, every last dime, and I'll withdraw the police report. As for the will, it still stands. Trust, once lost, is hard to regain. You and Brooke made your choice. Now live with the consequences. I hung up without waiting for an answer. Despite the firmness in my voice, all I felt inside was emptiness and fatigue. This was not a victory, but a bitter necessity. Walking slowly down the street, I thought about what Elizabeth would have said if she were alive. She had always been gentler than me, more inclined to forgive. But even she, for all her kindness, wouldn't be able to turn a blind eye to such a betrayal. Do what you think is right, Eugene. I felt as if I heard her voice, not out of revenge, but out of justice. I nodded to myself. That was exactly what I had done, not out of revenge, but out of justice. The 2 weeks of waiting dragged on for an excruciatingly long time. I tried to occupy myself with everyday things, reading, watching TV, sometimes going to Helen's house for tea and blueberry pie. She didn't ask about my problems, though she must have noticed my tension. That delicacy was one of her qualities that I particularly appreciated. Aiden called a few more times from the cruise ship, but I didn't answer. I had nothing to add to what I had already said. I was firm in my decision and wasn't going to change it because of tearful entreaties or contrived explanations. Instead, I focused on the legal aspects of the situation. I met regularly with Winifred to discuss the next steps. She had prepared a formal demand for a refund which we planned to hand to Aiden and Brooke as soon as they returned. If they refused to honor it voluntarily, the next step would be legal action. The day of Aiden and Brooke's return finally arrived. I heard about it from Penelope, who called me this morning. Uncle Eugene. Her voice sounded strained. They came back last night. Aiden called me. He's very upset. Says you filed a police report on them and changed the will? Is that true? Yes, I answered briefly. Oh my God, she exhaled. I didn't realize it was so serious. Aiden said that there had been a misunderstanding about the money. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Penelope, I said firmly. They stole $66,000 from me, used the power of attorney that I gave them to steal from me. After talking to Penelope, I called Winifred to let her know that Aiden and Brooke were back. We arranged to meet in her office the next day. She promised to invite them by formal letter. The night before the meeting, I slept poorly. I was plagued by disturbing dreams in which Elizabeth was telling me something important, but I couldn't make out the words. I awoke at dawn with a heavy head and a sense of the inevitability of the coming confrontation. Winifred's office greeted me with the coolness of the air conditioner and the smell of coffee. I arrived early to gather my thoughts and discuss the final details with Winifred. They confirmed their coming, she said as she poured me a cup of strong black coffee. Their lawyer, one Patricia Quinn, had called. Apparently they'd decided to get a representative too. At exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rang. The secretary, Winifred, ushered Aiden, Brooke, and an elegant middle-aged woman in an austere suit, apparently their lawyer, into the conference room. I looked closely at my son and daughter-in-law. Aiden looked gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes. His usually neatly combed hair was disheveled, as if he'd run his hand through it many times in a nervous gesture. Brooke, on the other hand, seemed collected and even a little defiant. Her tanned skin contrasted with her white business suit, and a new necklace, no doubt bought with my money, glittered around her neck. Father, Aiden stepped forward, holding out his hand. I didn't respond to the gesture, just nodded coldly. Have a seat, Winifred offered, pointing to the chairs across from us. Patricia Quinn, their lawyer introduced herself. I represent Mr. and Mrs. Thornton.
Winifred Holloway, my lawyer nodded. Representing Mr. Eugene Thornton. Winifred took out a folder of documents and put it on the table. The facts are these. Between July 5th and July 12th of this year, a total of $66,300 $324.50 was withdrawn from Eugene Thornton's account. All transactions were made by Brooke Thornton using a power of attorney that my client gave to her and Aiden Thornton on June 22nd. The funds were spent on the Thornton couple's personal needs, including a cruise trip, clothing, jewelry, and other purchases. Winifred spread copies of bank statements, photos from Brooke's social media accounts, and printouts from the cruise company's website on the table. My client didn't consent to these transactions and wasn't informed of them. He only became aware of what had happened when he received a bank notice of a large withdrawal. That's not entirely true, Brooke interjected, raising her voice for the first time. We discussed the possibility of traveling with Eugene. He said himself that we needed more rest. That's a lie, I replied calmly. I never said anything like that. On the contrary, I've always considered cruises a waste of money. Perhaps you misunderstood each other, Patricia suggested diplomatically. In any case, the power of attorney did give my clients the right to handle Mr. Thornton's funds. Legally, yes, Winifred nodded. But there is the concept of abuse of trust. Using a power of attorney for personal enrichment without the knowledge and consent of the principal could be considered fraud. What exactly do you want? Patricia asked, cutting to the chase. A full refund of all the funds used illegally within 30 days, Winifred replied. And a written acknowledgement of the misuse of the power of attorney. A written confession is out of the question, Patricia said firmly. It could be used against my clients in case of criminal prosecution. Then we'll activate the police report, Winifred shrugged. Wait a minute, Aiden intervened. Let's not be in a hurry, Dad, he turned to me. We're really ready to return the money, every penny of it, but is it really necessary to bring the case to the police? It could ruin Brooke's career, and mine too. You should have thought of that before, I said coldly. Before you stole from your own father. We weren't stealing, Brooke said indignantly. We used the power of attorney you gave us. To pay my bills in the event of my incapacity, I countered. Not so you could take a lavish vacation at my expense. Eugene, Brooke tried to soften her tone. I understand that you're upset, but let's look at the situation objectively. Aiden and I are taking care of you. We help out around the house. We visit every week. Don't we deserve a little vacation? Especially since we were planning to surprise you. What kind of surprise? I didn't hide my annoyance. We wanted to invite you to join us for the second week of the cruise, Brooke said quickly, in honor of your upcoming birthday. That's why the extra expense was necessary. For clothes, for preparing a cabin for you. My birthday is in October, I reminded her. That's 3 months away. We wanted to surprise you early, Brooke persisted, so you wouldn't guess. Stop lying, I felt my anger boiling up inside me again. You didn't say a word about any surprise when you posted the pictures on social media. You bragged to your neighbors about an unexpected financial opportunity. You didn't even think to call me when you left. I proposed the following solution, Patricia said. My clients are willing to pay back the full amount within 60 days. In exchange, Mr. Thornton Sr. will withdraw the police report and take no further legal action against his son and daughter-in-law. 30 days, Winifred said firmly, and a written undertaking never to abuse Mr. Thornton's trust again. 45 days, Patricia suggested, and an oral undertaking in the presence of witnesses. Accepted. Winifred nodded, looking at me and receiving my barely perceptible nod. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Brooke said when the lawyers were done with the document. It's about the will. The will is not up for discussion, I cut her off. But Eugene, she tried to smile. It's too drastic. One misunderstanding shouldn't undo years of marriage. It's not a misunderstanding. I looked her straight in the eye. It's a conscious decision to steal from me, and the consequences of that decision will be quite deliberate too. Dad, Aiden interjected, I understand that you're angry, and you have a right to be. But to exclude Brooke from the will and limit my share, it's too much. We're family, no matter what. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said firmly, and my decision is final. Brooke won't get a dime. Your share will be limited and contingent. Most of the estate will go into a trust for your future children, if you ever have any. But that's not fair. Brooke couldn't take it anymore. We take care of you. We visit you every week. We help with the house. And you're willing to throw it all away because of one mistake. Care? I grinned bitterly. You call it caring that you come to my house once a week for a meal I cook, or that Aiden mows the front lawn once in a while. That's not caring, Brooke. That's the bare minimum of courtesy, and you crossed even that when you decided to steal from me. Brooke, Patricia said softly, let's focus on the issues at hand. The will is Mr. Thornton's private matter, and we can't legally challenge his decision. But it's not fair, Brooke was almost screaming. He can't just take me out of the will. I'm his daughter-in-law. I have the right— You have no right to my property, I interrupted her coldly. Not legally, not morally, especially after what you've done. Aiden, Brooke turned to her husband. Say something. He can't do this to us. Aiden looked confused. He looked from me to Brooke and back again, obviously not knowing what to say. Dad, he finally said, I understand that you're upset, and I admit that what we did was wrong, but leaving Brooke out of the will completely, that seems too harsh. Wrong? I shook my head. Aiden, you didn't just do wrong, you committed a crime. If it weren't for the fact that you were my son, you'd both be testifying to the police right now. We'll get the money back, Aiden said quickly. Every dime of it, I promise. I know. I nodded. Or you'll go to jail. But it's not just about money, son. It's about trust. It's about respect, basic decency. And you and Brooke trampled all of that. Brooke stood up abruptly. It was her, wasn't it? She almost hissed. Your neighbor, Helen. She's the one turning you against us. I saw you two having a nice chat over tea. She wants to take my place, to be the new Mrs. Thornton and get all your money. Brooke! Aiden pulled her back, shocked by the outburst. Helen has nothing to do with this, I said calmly. This is entirely my decision based solely on your actions. I don't believe it, Brooke continued to scream. You've always been against me, always thinking I wasn't good enough for your precious son. And now you found a reason to take everything away from me. Brooke, please calm down. Patricia put a hand on her shoulder. This isn't helping our cause. I'm not calming down, Brooke shook off her hand. He can't do this to us. We've put up with his nagging, his stinginess, his coldness for years. And now he's going to deprive us of everything because of one little mistake. $66,000 is not a little mistake, Winifred pointed out. It's a serious financial crime. What kind of crime? Brooke turned to her. I used a legitimate power of attorney. Everything was legal. Abuse of trust is a crime, Winifred replied calmly. And we have more than enough evidence to convince the court of that. Brooke opened her mouth to reply, but Aiden suddenly grabbed her arm. Stop it, Brooke. His voice sounded suddenly firm. Just enough. She looked at him in surprise. Are you taking his side? After everything I've done for you? I'm not on anyone's side. Aiden looked exhausted. I'm just tired of all this. We were wrong, Brooke. Seriously wrong. And we have to live with the consequences. What are you talking about? Brooke looked at him puzzled. What consequences? We'll just return the money and that's it. Your father should understand and forgive us. He doesn't have to forgive us, Aiden said quietly. Not after what we've done. A month had passed since our meeting in Winifred's office. The 45 days given to Aiden and Brooke to return the money were coming to an end, and there had been no word from them, no payment, only silence, broken by occasional calls from Penelope, who was trying to mediate our conflict. Uncle Eugene, she said on our last conversation, Aiden really wants to make things right. He's looking for ways to raise money, But Brooke, she thinks you're just intimidating them into not actually going to court against your own son. She's wrong, I replied coldly. If they don't return the money by the deadline, I'll activate a police report and I'll file a civil suit. The deadline expired yesterday. No money, not even an attempt to contact me. This morning, I called Winifred and instructed her to proceed according to our plan. Depended as Now I was sitting in her office going over a copy of the lawsuit. It was a strange feeling, suing my own son. But there was no choice. It wasn't just and not so much about money. It was about principle, respect, fairness. Are you sure you want to go all the way? Winifred asked, watching me read the document. Absolutely, I nodded. It won't be easy, she warned me. Emotionally, I mean. The trial, the testimony, the cross-examinations, it could all be very painful. I'm ready, I said, signing the statement of claim. When I got home, I was in for a surprise. Aiden was standing on the doorstep, pale, gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes. Dad, he stepped forward. We need to talk. I led him into the house in silence. We went into the kitchen where I habitually put the kettle on. This routine contrasted strangely with the tension of the moment. I've filed a lawsuit, I said, without turning around. This morning. I know, Aiden said quietly. We got a call from the court. The deadline expired yesterday. I turned to him. You didn't return the money. You haven't contacted me. What did you expect? Dad, He hesitated. I tried to collect. I really did. I've taken on extra work, sold my car, but it's not enough. And Brooke, she refuses to pay back what she spent. She says you're bluffing, that you won't sue your own son. So what do you think now? I asked. Now I know you weren't bluffing. Aiden grinned bitterly. You never bluff, do you? I didn't say anything. The kettle boiled, and I poured 2 cups of tea in silence. I put one in front of my son. I've come to ask for a reprieve, Aiden said after a pause. Another month. I'm almost halfway there, and I'll talk to Brooke. Make her understand the gravity of the situation. And if she doesn't? I asked. What then? Aiden lowered his eyes. I don't know, Dad. I don't know. I looked at my son, broken, confused, unsure, and somewhere deep inside me I felt a twinge of pity, but not strong enough to override the feeling of betrayal. I'll give you 2 weeks, I finally said. No more. If you don't get all the money back in that time, the process will continue. And Aiden, I looked him straight in the eye, this is your last chance. No more delays, no more negotiations. Thank you, Dad, he breathed out in relief. I promise we'll get it all back. Don't make promises you can't keep, I said dryly. Just do what you have to do. Aiden left, and I sat in the kitchen, staring out the window at my neglected garden. Elizabeth had always said that a garden was a reflection of its owner's soul. What would she say when she saw these weeds and withered bushes? 2 weeks passed in anxious anticipation. I hardly left the house, avoided seeing Helen and the other neighbors. I didn't want to discuss my family drama with anyone. On the 13th day, I got a call from Winifred. Eugene? Her voice sounded surprised. A wire transfer just came in. $66,324.50, the exact amount they were supposed to pay back. Who's the wire from? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Aiden Thornton, Winifred confirmed. Looks like your son was able to raise the money after all. Or Brooke finally realized I wasn't bluffing, I said. Maybe, Winifred agreed. Either way, we can withdraw the suit. They'd honored the terms of the agreement, albeit at the last minute. I thanked her and hung up. A strange feeling came over me. Not joy, not satisfaction, but rather emptiness. The money was back. Justice had been served. But at what cost? The relationship with my only son was ruined, perhaps irretrievably. That same evening, Aiden called me. Dad, his voice sounded strained. Did you get the transfer? Yes, I answered. Winifred informed me. Good. He was silent for a moment. I wanted to say, we kept our end of the bargain. The money's been returned, now what? Now the suit will be dropped, I said, just like we agreed. Ah, what about us? Aiden asked cautiously. Our relationship, I wondered. What could I say? That everything was okay? That I'd forgiven them? That would be a lie. I need time, Aiden, I finally said. Trust once broken isn't easy to rebuild. I understand, he said quietly. Just know that I'm sorry. I really am. A week passed after that conversation. I didn't call Aiden and he didn't call me. We both realized we needed a pause, time to think. Then, on Sunday, as I was reading the paper on the porch, a familiar car pulled up to the house. Aiden and Brooke. I tensed, not knowing what to expect from this visit. They walked up to the veranda. Brooke looked unusually modest, no flashy jewelry, wearing a simple dress. Aiden seemed determined, though I could see him nervously clenching and unclenching his fists. "Hello, Dad," he said. We wanted to talk." I silently pointed to the chairs across from me. They sat down. "Eugene," Brooke began, clearly trying to speak softly, "I want to offer you my sincere apologies. What I did, it was wrong. I abused your trust, your kindness, and I'm sorry for that." I looked at her carefully. Her words sounded right, but her eyes remained cold, calculating. She was apologizing not because she was truly sorry, but because it was necessary. "We got the money back," she continued, "every last dime, and we hope that in time you will be able to, if not forgive, at least understand. We're a family, Eugene, and family should be stronger than any disagreement." "Family," I repeated thoughtfully. "You know, Brooke, family isn't just a family name or blood ties. It's trust, respect, honesty, all the things you've trampled on with your actions." "I understand," she lowered her eyes. "And I swear that I will never again—" "Don't swear," I interrupted her. "I don't believe them, and neither do you." "Dad," Aiden interjected, "we really want to fix this, a fresh start. We've given the money back, we've apologized. What else can we do?" I looked at my son. I could see in his eyes a sincere hope for reconciliation. But was that hope well-founded? "There are some things you can't just fix, Aiden," I said quietly. "You can't undo betrayal with an apology. You can't regain trust once broken. But we have to at least try." There was desperation in his voice. "For the family, for Mom. She'd want us to make up." The mention of Elizabeth hurt me. Yeah, she was always looking for peace in the family, always willing to forgive, to give second chances. But even she had her limits. "Don't use your mother's memory to manipulate me," I said coldly. "It's undignified." "I didn't." Aiden started, but he stopped, realizing I was right. "I'll tell you what," I said after a pause. "I accept your apology and your refund. The lawsuit is withdrawn and the police report is withdrawn. Legally, everything is settled between us, but on the personal side," I shook my head. "From a personal point of view, I need time. A lot of time." "Of course, Dad," Aiden said quickly. "We understand. We'll give you as much time as you need." "And one more thing," I added. "My decision about the will still stands. Brooke is completely excluded. Your share, Aiden, is limited and contingent. Most of the estate will go into a trust for your future children, if you ever have any." "But, Eugene!" Brooke couldn't take it anymore. "We fixed it. We gave the money back. We apologized." "You returned the stolen money and apologized for stealing it," I said calmly. "That doesn't give you the right to my inheritance. Dad, please." Aiden looked confused. "Let's not talk about this right now. Let's just try to work things out, one step at a time." I nodded, not wanting to continue this conversation. They left shortly after, leaving me alone with my thoughts. 2 months passed. Aiden called regularly, but our conversations remained shallow, awkward. He never once brought Brooke over, and I was glad for that. Seeing her face, hearing her voice would have been too much to bear. And then came the letter from Penelope. It was strange to get a paper letter in the age of email, but she'd always been a little old-fashioned. "Dear Uncle Eugene," she wrote, "I have been wondering for a long time if I should get involved, but I've decided you should know. Aiden and Brooke are getting a divorce. Aiden found out that Brooke was seeing another man, his co-worker, at work. It seems it started before the money story. Aiden is in a very difficult state right now. He feels betrayed, cheated. I know things aren't going well between you two, but maybe he's in particular need of a father's support right now. Think about it. Love, Penelope." I sat for a long time, rereading the letter. Aiden and Brooke were getting a divorce. Brooke was cheating on him. Perhaps the money she had stolen from me was needed not only for the cruise, but also to meet her lover. I got a call this evening. Aiden. "Dad!" His voice sounded lifeless. "I think you already know. Penelope said she wrote to you." "Yes," I confirmed. "I'm sorry, son." "Don't be." He grinned bitterly. "You were always right about her, weren't you? Always saw things I didn't want to see." I didn't say anything. What could I say? That I was glad to be right? That would be cruel. "I'm moving," Aiden continued. "Got a job in Chicago. I'm starting over." "I see," I said. "Maybe it's for the best." "I guess so," he agreed. "Dad, I was wondering, can I come over before I leave? To say goodbye?" "Sure," I answered without hesitation. "When?" "Tomorrow." There was hope in his voice. "If you're not busy." "I'll see you at lunch," I said. Aiden arrived at noon sharp the next day. He looked gaunt and aged, but there was a new light in his eyes, as if the weight that had been weighing him down for years had finally been lifted. We had lunch on the veranda, discussing his plans for the future. A new job, a new apartment, a new life. He seemed almost enthusiastic, though I could see how sometimes his gaze became absent, sunk in unhappy thoughts. "You know, Dad," he said as we drank coffee after lunch, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about the money, about the cruise, about everything, and I realized something." "What's that?" I asked. "I was weak," he said simply. "All my life I'd let other people decide for me. First you, then Brooke. I never stood up for myself, never stood up for my principles. Maybe because I didn't have any." I stared at my son, surprised by this sudden candor. "But now," he continued, "now I want to change, to be stronger, to make my own decisions, to take responsibility for my own actions." "That's a good decision," I nodded. "And I want to start now," Aiden straightened in his chair. "I know you changed your will, excluded Brooke, limited my share, and I want to say that I fully accept that decision. In fact, I think you should completely cut me out of it too." "What?" I couldn't believe my ears. "Take me out of the will, Dad," Aiden said firmly. "I don't deserve your inheritance, not after what I did, or rather, what I haven't done, not stopped Brooke, not protected you." "Aiden," I shook my head, "you shouldn't punish yourself like that."
It's not a punishment, he countered.
"It's redemption. A chance to prove to myself first and foremost that I can live on my own, by my own labor, without waiting for an inheritance, without depending on other people's money." I stared at my son for a long time, trying to make sense of his words. For the first time in many years, I saw in him not a weak, dependent man, but an adult man making a difficult but correct decision. "All right," I said at last. "If you're sure, I'll amend the will, but on one condition. The trust fund for your future children will remain." "I agree," Aiden nodded. "That's fair." He left that evening, promising to call from Chicago. I stood on the doorstep, staring at his car, and for the first time in a long time I felt something akin to pride in my son. 6 months passed. Aiden called regularly, talking about his new life in Chicago. He was really changing, becoming more confident, more independent. He got a promotion at work, started dating a new girl, an elementary school teacher who, from what he told me, was the complete opposite of Brooke. I wasn't standing still either. I tidied up the garden, started going to the local retirement club, even played golf occasionally, a sport I had always considered a waste of time and money. Helen became a frequent visitor to my house, and our friendship gradually grew into something more, although we both took our time. Today, as I sat on the veranda and watched the sunset, I reflected on the winding path our family had traveled over the past year. Betrayal, trial, reconciliation, new beginnings. All of it might not have happened if it weren't for Brooke's greed and my integrity. Was it worth it? It's hard to say. On one hand, Aiden and I had lost a few months of our relationship, experienced pain and disappointment. On the other hand, maybe this crisis helped him to grow up, to find his way. And for me, to realize that the money I'd been saving all my life actually meant a lot less than I'd thought. There was an unread letter from Aiden on the table next to me. He'd sent it yesterday, marked personal. I hadn't decided if I was ready to read it yet. Maybe it's just another apology I don't need. Or maybe something important that will help us move on. The sun was slowly sinking below the horizon, coloring the sky orange and purple. I remembered how Elizabeth and I loved to sit on this veranda, watching the sunsets. Every sunset is a promise of a new dawn, she used to say. Maybe she was right. Maybe everything that had happened to us was necessary for that new dawn to come. For Aiden, for me, for our family. I took the letter, twirled it in my hands. Then I put it back on the table. I'll read it tomorrow, or the day after that, when I'm ready. For now, I'll just enjoy the sunset, the silence, and the sense of justice that, despite everything, brings peace to my soul.